Hi, everyone. Chris Richardson here from BDV Solutions, President and General Counsel. We're going to do things a little bit different today. I am going to answer any and all of your questions, whether they relate to immigration or otherwise. I know that's something that we used to do in the past, and I definitely want to get back into doing more of that and helping people understand what's going on with the U.S. immigration. The big news out at least yesterday was that the Visa Bulletin moved forward in time a little bit, which is great. BDV had the highest number of green card approvals in April, 34, which was great. And I think we're on track to have another bang up month rather. And that's a good sign because it means that the government is issuing green cards. The more people that get their green cards, the better, because that means less people in the backlog. And we did move forward a month or so, or 6 weeks, which is positive sign for the rest of the year. And my hope is that we'll continue moving forward for the rest of this year. And then in October, my hope is that we'll see a huge movement. As you all know, with the Visa Bulletin, it reset. Well, the 10,000 are supposed to reset in October. So my hope is that this forward progression is going to help lead to an even further progression in October. That's what the hope is. But answering some questions here and thinking about let's see. So someone's asking. So someone asked about the embassy in Nepal and not getting an appointment, and so. In some instances, even though you might be current, you actually might not be getting an interview at your embassy or consulate, especially if the embassy or consulate has a huge backlog. Bangladesh and Nepal have really, really big backlogs from COVID, even still, of EB-3 cases especially. And so the embassies and consulates are always going to give priority to family-based cases. Before they give priority to EB-3, or employment-based cases, they're always going to want to favor the family-based cases. And there's only been so many officers, right? I used to be a visa officer, and this is something we'd always do as visa officers. We give priority to family-based cases, and especially cases with, it's like you're married to an American citizen, because those connections and ties are just more important to embassies and consulates than employment. And so even though there are, so even though you might be current, you might not be current for that embassy or that consulate. So they have their own wait list within the embassy and consulate. So even though it might be like you're current as of June 2021, the embassy or consulate, and Nepal and Bangladesh are good examples of this, they might be like, well, because of our staffing, you actually, the only people who are really current are the ones from 2020. Unless you find a way to argue that you should have your case heard earlier. And there are ways to do that. And that's something that our team should be able to help with. And if not, let me know, send me an email, and I'm happy to brainstorm ways to get people their interviews. But if an employer says, I'm struggling, I really, really need this worker, or an employer says, hey, I really need, for not emergency, but certainly very valid financial reasons, I need this worker, then the embassy sometimes will be able to help. Are Canadians eligible for the program? Absolutely. Canadians, anybody all over the world, are eligible for it. We do have several Canadians who've applied for the EB-3 unskilled program. And for a lot of Canadians, it's an attractive option, especially if you're, if you were from another country and then got Canadian citizenship, but you still have that desire to come and live and work in the U.S., becoming a Canadian citizen is definitely a way that you can get the EB-3 program to become a U.S. green card holder and then a U.S. citizen. So I encourage Canadians to apply. And I think it's definitely something that no matter what country or nationality you're in, they should do this program. Let's see. Yes, Pakistani national absolutely can and should apply for the program. Here at BDV, we accept applicants from all countries except from India and China, and that's just because their wait times are far too long for the employers. right now, if you're a Pakistani national or any national of any country, I think it could be 3-4 years while we work through the backlog and the retrogression backlog. Although I do feel like um, during the last Trump administration, we had some retrogression that kind of went away due to COVID, but also because the immigration program just became a lot harder. And I think that benefits BDV because our clients are top caliber clients and we're a top caliber company. And I think that helps us navigate and withstand some of the changes and some of the harder avenues that exist now. And so I think signing up with BDV, especially now, is actually beneficial because I think we're going to see the Visa Bulletin move gradually forward in time. And then hopefully in October, it'll move even further in time. And so that is to say that, right now it's probably 4 years, I would say 3-4 years. But if the Visa Bulletin continues to move forward and we see more movement, especially after October, meaning less people are applying, I do think that that's a possibility that things might become current. And also I remind people that when I talked to David Baer, we had that interview, things change really fast, right? Especially in immigration. So if USCIS changes certain of their procedures as they've done in the past, it's very possible that 3-4 year wait in 1 month could go to 2 years or 1 year or even current. It's never been that the retrogression has existed consistently across the board. It's always been cyclical. And so it's a real possibility that you could see a change in government that might make it shorter than 4 years, what it is now. All right, so my case has been documentarily qualified from NBC. NBC interview to be scheduled. So yeah, like I said before, even with Bangladesh and Nepal, the issue is that even though you might be documentarily qualified and even though you're current according to the Visa Bulletin, embassies and consulates put in their own Visa Bulletin or retrogression even further in time than the actual Visa Bulletin or retrogression. And the reason is because the embassies and consulates are only but so many officers, right? So I served in Pakistan. I can tell you that, and I talked to my former colleagues at the embassy in Pakistan, in Islamabad and in Karachi as well. And they just have a lot going on. They have a ton of SIVs. They have a ton of Afghan refugees. They have a ton of family-based cases. They have a lot of different cases. And unfortunately, embassies and consulates are going to give priority, especially in Pakistan. They're going to give priority to the people from Afghanistan who've applied for visas and who worked at the embassy before, worked as interpreters. They're going to give priority to those people. And there's hundreds of thousands of those cases, or tens of thousands at this point of those cases. If you're a family-based case and you've been waiting a long time, they're going to get priority to those family-based cases because you know what? They're married to U.S. citizens, their parents are U.S. citizens, or their children are U.S. citizens. And they're always going to get priority to family members. That's just the way our immigration system is. It is about priorities. And so in Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, what we're seeing is that there's only but so few officers, and fewer still officers, and a lot more applications, especially from COVID, that they still 5-6 years later have to work through. And then in Pakistan's case, they have all of these SIVs, meaning the people who were the interpreters and the Afghan refugees. They got all those cases that they have to work through as well. And so, unfortunately, even though your case might be current, the embassy might not be able to schedule an interview yet, just because they don't have the staffing to do it. All right, and so on the I-140, so the problem with the I-140 is, yes, there's a large backlog of people. I think that the problem, though, with the I-140 and what the government might be fixing or trying to fix is this idea of people doing double, triple, quadruple filings, right? And I tell that to our own clients. You think about the lifespan of a lot of you, especially those who are impacted by retrogression or dropouts. you might have 1 or 2 or 3 I-140s going. I've had clients that have had 4 or 5 I-140s going, but the problem, and that is a right, but the problem with that is that it contributes to the backlog. David Baer had said, and he's right, that 30 to 40% of the backlog, maybe 30%, I'd say 25-30%, are people who file double or triple I-140s, and that the government has no way of knowing, which I-140 is real, like which one is the right one, which one is the one they want to go through. And I suspect that they don't track that. They just say, okay, someone's filed for I-140, they just have an I-140. And so I do think that there is a movement within government. It's certainly something we've been pushing for, is that you should really make applicants pick an I-140 and remove that other I-140 or even that other I-485 or consular case out of the process. That way, we can clear up some of the backlog, because a lot of the backlog really is, between the spouses, the dependents, and just like the people who have double, triple filings. A lot of the backlog, I think, could be cleared up by just government regulation and government work. But yes, with 28,000, assuming though that all 28,000 of those actually want the green card. And what's probably going to happen, and what we've already seen, is that when it comes time for these people to interview, a lot of them either withdraw their case or don't want to move forward with their case, or they've just vanished, right? If your case, there's a lot of I-140s that are, even from back in 2015, 2014, 2013. Guess what? If your case is now current and you have that opportunity, you probably have already made other plans, possibly with your life. Not everyone's going to do that, but a lot of people will. And so I think that that's one of the big problems that exists in immigration, is just that you have a lot of people doing a ton of filings, which is their right. And I get it. Like, people want backup filings just in case, they want different avenues just in case one thing goes wrong or the other goes wrong. But I do think that there has to be a way, to count the person and not necessarily the I-140 application itself, and make that the standard or the for the Visa Bulletin, instead of the individuals. All right. Let's see. So, can I switch from asylum granted? So, if you have actual asylum approved, you should have a green card or ability, but if you shouldn't even need to switch to EB-3. But if you have pending asylum, it is very, very difficult right now to switch to EB-3, and we don't recommend that now. In the past, we've done that. Other companies have done it. The government was a lot more lenient about that. The government viewed pending asylum as a category which you could adjust your status. USCIS has moved away from that, and now they're almost not issuing anybody who has asylum. They do sometimes still, but for your protection and just because we don't want to have people in situations where they get denied, we have been recommending people don't switch from EB-3 asylum pending to EB-3, because I just think it's not. And that isn't to say that that's always going to be the case. For those of us who've been in it a long time, we remember that, TPS used to have the same issues. And then TPS switched to some states, you're allowed to do TPS and adjust status. In other states, you couldn't do it. And then the federal government, the Supreme Court said, you know what, everybody can do adjust status. And so while as of today, pending asylum isn't really a thing, I think that down the road, you could see a switch back. Now, whether we'd want to switch back, that's always harder. The more people that get into the system, that makes it the backlog harder on the people who've been in the system, right? And so I think there has to be a way to balance the two. But yes, once upon a time, you could switch from asylum to EB-3 or employment-based, but I don't think that that's a thing anymore. Is it true that there are discussions about removing dependents? Yes. There have been serious discussions in Congress. And the way this is working right now with President Trump in Congress is that President Trump is committed to deporting as many people as possible. That's his thing. That's what he wants to do. He wants to deport as many people as possible. He wants them all out of the system. And then once he thinks he has a sufficient number of people out, or he has a sufficient ability to say, I've taken control of the border, what his people would like to do is make immigration reform. And one of the things that has been floated among both Republicans and Democrats is the idea of removing dependents from being counted in the quota, which makes perfect sense to me. Like, like for EB-3, it doesn't, the dependent or spouse isn't doing the work. So I don't know why they have to be counted in the quota. And so there are serious conversations about ensuring that in the future, those people wouldn't be counted in the quota. The other big thing they're talking about, and they've been talking about for a while, has been recapturing old numbers, right? And so EB-3 and all employment-based cases are use it or lose it. If the government doesn't use all 140,000 by the end of the year, it basically just falls off the face of the earth. And so there's a movement within Congress among Republicans of basically recapturing all the old numbers from the past that fell off. If they recaptured all the numbers from even 1990, you would be looking at like 500,000 to 1 million cases that they would have to hand out to the employment base, which would be phenomenal too. But it does come down to priorities. It does come down to what President Trump wants. If President Trump gives the green light and says, I want to do a deal, it'll happen. Absolutely. I think the Democrats are willing and ready to do a deal. And I do think that certain Republicans would like to do a deal, but they want to be able to go back to their constituents and say, hey, look, we got the border under control. The border is much better. And now we can focus on legal immigration. Yeah. So the Dignity Act is one of those bills that would do that. So the Dignity Act I don't think it has a recapture provision in it, but it certainly does have exempting the dependents. And so the idea is the Dignity Act is that they would actually, so I think it would do both. It would do a good and a bad thing. It would do a good thing in that it would exempt dependents. I think there's conversations about adding the recapture thing I just talked about to it. But I believe that in its current form, it actually would lift the country cap, meaning that all the people in the world would get mixed with Indians and Chinese applicants. And I think that might be a wash, basically, with the Dignity Act. If you mix all the Indians and Chinese who've been waiting, their wait time is far longer than the rest of the world, ROW. Then, I do think, though, that on balance, and I'll talk to David Baer about this, probably on balance, it would help retrogression, help lessen retrogression if that happened. But that would be a worry of mine, is that if you pass the Dignity Act in its current form and you lift those country caps, it might make things either the same or maybe just a little bit better. And really with the country caps, the only real way to fix that is just to increase the numbers. And if President Trump says, hey, I want to increase the numbers, that'd be fantastic, because they would do it. But at the end of the day, until someone like a President Trump says, I want to increase the numbers, it's probably not going to happen. Can you tell me how important is proof of funds during a consular interview? And so the question about proof of funds is an interesting one. It's less about, so there's something in consular, something in visas called the public charge, which is something that's really, really, like, I think it's the oldest or second oldest law in U.S. immigration. And the idea is that if you get sponsored to come to the U.S., you should be able to afford to live in the United States, right? And so a lot of the jobs in the EB-3 world are, minimum wage jobs. And so consulates and embassies have concerns and doubts about whether a person can be able to afford to live and work in the U.S. The way we usually get around that, and the way most immigration attorneys and the way as a visa officer I would get around it, is if you have a spouse and that spouse is also going to work, or if you have like another job lined up, and you show that to the embassy, then that should overcome their concerns about the public charge. But the public charge gives the embassy officers the ability and authority to look and say, hey, this person can't afford to live in the U.S., so I'm going to squash it. One question that came up earlier is, can a consular officer actually deny an EB-3 case? And the answer is no. Consular officers actually don't have the authority to deny a case. What they can do is they can send the case back to USCIS and say, hey, USCIS, I think this case should be denied for X, Y, or Z reason. And so a lot of people will tell me, oh, my case got denied at the embassy. Not possible. What they could do, though, is they can send the case back to USCIS, ask USCIS to revoke the case, rescind the case, but 9 times out of 10, USCIS never does it. So really, the only thing the consular officer can do is just add more time to your case, right? Like they can just add more delays by saying that they want to see this or they want to see that, or they think USCIS should revoke it. But only USCIS has the authority ultimately to revoke it. And if USCIS issues a case, they generally don't like undoing that, especially not for consular officers who they don't really like or respect anyway. So but that's a story for another day. What else do we have here? Can we retransfer our case from Pakistan to another country in order to be scheduled for a visa interview? Yes, you could move your case from Pakistan to another country. But the issue with that is always that you have to have permission to live in that country, to work in that country, and to be in that country. And you may need a visa to that country, right? And then the second thing is that every embassy and consulate has different rules on third country nationals. And so while the main State Department says, hey, you should be able to apply from anywhere, individual embassies and consulates don't always do that. And so that's always the issue, is that you can try to do that, but you have to find a place that will allow you to stay or even visit and stay. And you have to make sure that the embassy will allow you to do it, because some embassies, even though the State Department says, hey, you should do that, they don't want to do it anymore. And I know there's a question on here about a sponsor, dropping out, and that's been a huge issue at BDV, and it's something that's been incredibly frustrating and sad for me, seeing that employers, drop out and realize that, when an employer is threatening to drop out or has an issue, we try to get ahead of it as fast as possible. We talk to these employers. We really put all of our efforts into it. We threaten them, we cajole them. And sometimes, unfortunately, there are just things that are beyond our control as a business. If a business sells to another business, 5-6 years ago when we first started working with them, that wasn't an issue, but they sell to somebody else and you have to sell it to that new person. That makes it tough. If you, in another situation, one of the owners of a business is really, really sick. He's in the hospital and he's in really, really bad shape. And his business isn't going to be there anymore. And so in those situations, it's tough. But I also understand that we as a business need to do a better job of making sure that our clients are best served and that we find a way to penalize or punish these employers that do walk away. Because even if you walk away for a good reason, you're still impacting and hurting and delaying the lives of many, many different people. And that's just not right. And it's not fair. And it's something we as a business, we have to get ahead of, and we have to work harder at helping these businesses understand the ramifications of what they're doing and to really represent our foreign nationals better. And so for that, I do apologize. And that's something that I am working very, very hard to fix, because if there's things that keep me up at night, it's clients. It's clients going through stuff like that. It's clients having to fight and struggle and get delayed in the process. And I absolutely don't like that. Me and the old founder, Britt, and a lot of us, and most of us at BDV, and say all of us at BDV, we really do care about our clients. A lot of our employees are former clients. I've had a lot of foreign nationals. I've been in this for 6-7 years now, and in immigration for 15 years now, or 16 years now. And there's nothing that makes me feel happier than watching someone get their green card and achieving their dreams. And any delay in that or anything that gets in the way incredibly frustrates me. And I always want to find different solutions. And I'm working on some solutions, I hope, to help lessen the blow. And certainly I hope that we can convince some of these employers to change their mind, which we're already doing, but I'll continue to try. What other questions do we have? Yes, I think that we're starting to see EB-3 pick up the pace. And the reason is just because more people are getting their green cards and fewer people are applying on the front end, or at least the same amount of people are applying. It hasn't been, there was an explosion of applications. There was an explosion of former cases that all contributed and led to the retrogression that we have. Things have started to stabilize and even slow down slightly from last year. And so with that, the State Department feels comfortable issuing or allowing it to move forward in time. Now, if I had a magic wand, or if I worked at the State Department, or I was in charge of the State Department, I think the Visa Bulletin is complete bullshit. I think that the whole idea that there's nothing in Congress written anywhere that says that you should have a Visa Bulletin. Nothing, right? Like this is made up by the State Department. And it's so frustrating to me that you have like these government bureaucrats who just made up this Visa Bulletin thing. And they're basically saying, okay, well, your case isn't current until then. Like under whose authority, under what? To me, the logical thing is that everyone should apply. When they're out of 10,000, when they've actually issued all 10,000 of those visas, then you just say, you know what, no applications this year. We've got the 10,000. Every year, they don't even make the 10,000, right? And so it's like you're putting in retrogression, but you're also not meeting the 10,000. Something doesn't add up here. And so for me, a big complaint I've had, and one thing that I've been pushing our government relations team to impress upon Elon Musk and Doge and all these people, is that a lot of these regulations and a lot of these rules are just made up. The Visa Bulletin's made up. Like there's no, I challenge you to find what the INA says is, the State Department is to control the number of applications coming in. There are lots of different ways you can do that. You don't have to have a Visa Bulletin. And I think if anything, if you want to actually help the American worker, you want to help people, give them an EAD, have them work, and actually get to 10,000. And then after your 10,000, be like, okay, we issued all the visas, we're done. But again, story for another day. And my frustration and anger at the whole concept of a Visa Bulletin and how I don't even think it's legal, or rather it's legal, but it's just kind of bullshit. Next question. So at the moment you're working with your sponsor, you already have the I-140 approved. Can you have another job aligned? No. I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say no, or be very, very careful with it and cautious with it, probably talk to an attorney before you do that. Listen, everybody, all of our people who work for these companies, they absolutely love our people, right? They absolutely love working with our people. They love working with you all. And they love working with you all because the same reason I do is because you're all amazing, right? Like you, especially compared to other people that they have to work with every day, like the EB-3 worker, especially the BDV EB-3 worker, that's going to be your best worker. And so people are going to be like, hey, man, I really want to promote that person to a high level job, which is fine. But you just have to be careful that the job is not now so out of line with EB-3 unskilled, so that when the time comes for your visa interview, the government is like, wait a minute, this isn't really an EB-3 job anymore. At the end of the day, you're being sponsored for an EB-3 job. And you want to make sure that that job is actually an EB-3 job when you go to that interview. Now, after the interview is over and you have your green card and you're current, great. You stay with that company. We've had a lot of people, in fact, stay with a lot of our businesses. SCJ has a bunch of our people who are managers. Different businesses have different people. But at the end of the day, I think that you have to just be careful with that. Okay. I see another question on here. Let's see go ahead. If I get married after my EB-3 application, yes, you can add your spouse, but probably later. It'd be better to do it later. After you get toward the end, you can bring them over later. But yes, that is possible. You can bring your spouse over after, if you get married after the EB-3 application. How can someone from overseas apply? That's something called consular processing. I hope that our sales members are, actually, I think our sales members are on a meeting, so they might not be on this chat. But yes, that would be called consular processing. We highly encourage it. If you're overseas and you're trying to move to the U.S., you can definitely come through EB-3 by interviewing at your embassy or your consulate. I know somebody asked about the jobs. We only have one job that's online right now, but stay tuned. We're going to have, I hope, I don't want to give it away, but we do have like several more jobs coming down the pipe in the next couple of days, I hope. So I do understand that that's a frustrating point for me as well. I think I think that's something we're working on, and we'll definitely get some more jobs available soon. Can I apply for it? Yes. Now, yes, you can apply for EB-1 skilled and EB-3 and you can apply for everything, right? Like the law allows you to do that. And I think that that's everyone's right to do that. But I do want people to be aware that when you apply across the board, that in fact is what is contributing to visa retrogression. So we are contributing to visa retrogression. You're contributing to everybody who's in line contributes to visa retrogression, right? And so if you have 4, 5, 6 I-140s filed, and the thing about the I-140 being filed is that you can't even withdraw that, right? The government has to allow you to draw, and a lot of times the government won't even allow you to withdraw those. And so that's always a thing. Yes, you can apply for all the I-140s you want and see which one sticks, but in that way, we're all contributing to the wait times just being longer. All right, what else do we have here? Let's see, can the consul deny my application? The consular officer can deny a tourist visa application and an F1 application and non-immigrant applications. But like I said earlier, consular officers actually can't deny an EB-3 case. They can recommend that it be revoked at USCIS, but at the end of the day, they don't have the power to deny an EB-3 case. And a lot of times, and being a visa officer, most consular officers aren't lawyers. They don't really know immigration that well. And so they'll want to revoke a case based on things they don't understand. And so they can delay the case. They can make the case take longer. But at the end of the day, the Department of Homeland Security has to be the one to decide what's going to happen. If I'm a dual citizen, can I use either passport to apply for an EB-3 visa? Yes. If you're a dual citizen, you can use that. Also, if you are Indian or Chinese, but you're married to someone who's a citizen of another country, you can use that spouse's citizenship to get your application faster, right? And so you can have the priority date of your spouse, who's the non-Indian or Chinese, to get your application to move faster. I guess that's true of all visa. Like, let's say that you are Pakistani, but you're married to someone from Dubai, right? Like, you can use that spouse's Dubai application to get probably a faster interview that way. So that's something to always think about too. If I pay and start the process today, I would say right now 4 years. Today, as of today's estimate, I would say 4 years. But again, because there are fewer people, or about the same number, maybe a little bit less from last year, that are applying, we should see some stronger movement in the Visa Bulletin, especially toward the end of the year. Realistically, Visa Bulletin, you know, I talked to Charlie Oppenheim about this as well. He used to run the Visa Bulletin for 30 years or whatever. The Visa Bulletin is just magic. It doesn't make any sense. Like they just make up numbers basically. Well, that's not the way it technically works. The way the Visa Bulletin technically works is they send out a note to all the embassies and consulates around the world. They say, hey, do you have sufficient number of officers and ability to issue green cards or visas this year? Embassies and consulates go back to the State Department and say, no, can't do it. Or no, I can only do applications from this time or date. Or, you know, so they do a combination of that. They put it all together in a giant sorting hat machine, and then they say that's what the Visa Bulletin number is. It's just magic. They just make up stuff, right? And I'll tell you because Charlie Oppenheim will tell you that if he were still in charge of the Visa Bulletin, we'd be current. And so it's like, That doesn't make any sense. Like, so basically just one person in this office who's just making this call that I don't think anyone should be current for X, Y, or Z reason. So that's, again, I really do not like the Visa Bulletin, if you can't tell. But I do think that, come October, I hope that we're in 2022 by then. I hope that we've progressed enough that we can say that we're confidently in 2022, maybe later in 2021. That's my hope. But we will see how the year progresses. If anything, I could see even in September, especially if the numbers aren't looking good, if they don't think that they're going to reach the cap, I can see them rushing to get more interviews done and through. All right, I'm going to take one more question, and then we'll do this again. Maybe I'll do this again. I'm going to Vietnam next week. If you're in Vietnam, in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City or Da Nang, definitely look me up. I would love to meet with any clients who are actually in Vietnam. For maybe we'll do a town hall over there. But so the question was, the company, let's see, the company, so they never had an EB-3 applicant nor a W-2 employee, and the first W-2 employee. It could be a problem in that the consular might ask, how did this come about? But with good legal counsel and explaining in your interview how they came across this process, that should assuage all of those. That is to say that no visa officer, USCIS or state, can deny you based on that fact. The fact that you're the first W-2 employee. They can't deny you. They can ask a lot of questions, but there's no basis for the denial. And that's really important when I say that, because if there's no basis for the denial, it's something you can actually go to federal court with. That, at the end of the day, is why USCIS almost always issues these EB-3s, because you have to have a legal basis for denial. Because if you don't, and you go to federal court's going to side with the immigrant every time. And so that's why it's really important that USCIS gets it right. Now, can they delay your case? Could they take a really long time with your case? Could they sit on your case? Absolutely. Absolutely. They do that all the time. And I, as a visa officer, I used to see it all the time. And it would frustrate me to no end. That's why I left the government, was because it frustrated me to no end. But I do think that, at the end of the day, immigration is a journey, right? Like anybody who asks me, Chris, can you guarantee I'm going to get a green card? I say, absolutely not. Even if you are going to get a green card, I can't guarantee you anything in life, right? But what I can tell you is that I'm going to provide you the best service. I always say immigration is a ship. We're all in this ship together. This boat's going to have high water, low water, rough seas, no storms. There's going to be rough times and good times and bad times, right? Like, I've had applicants who've been mad enough that they've called me and said, I'm going to come to that office in Greenville and kick your ass. And I'm like, come on, bring it. It's fine. Come on, we'll talk. And they'll come to the office, we'll talk. And now those people and I are the best of friends. They got their green cards. They're okay. Immigration is a process. It's a long process. It's a tiring process. It's a frustrating process, but it's a process nevertheless. But if you follow the rules and you stay in line and you continue and you fight and you drive, you'll get there. I can't promise you when you'll get there. I hope you'll get there faster and sooner, but you will get there. And ultimately, if it's 4 years, 3 years, 5 years, that ability to have a green card and then U.S. citizenship and have your children have U.S. citizenship, and that ability to live and work and breathe in America and live that dream, that is worth the wait. It is worth the wait. It is something I wish we as Americans, we appreciated that more. There's so many people in the world really want this opportunity to live and work and really thrive in the United States. It's why I love this country. It's why I love America. I love my country. I love what we're able to do in good times and bad, right? Like I love my country partially because of the people who I've worked with at BDV, and the people and the clients at BDV, and just how, having lived, in 7, 8 different countries in the world, I realized that America has a lot of benefits. And at the end of the day, any investment and any hard work is just going to take some time. There's a client now who their case was delayed and had so many issues back and forth with the Dominican Republic. We got them here, And, you know, now they run a car dealership. They run different things. Their kids in school. That stuff makes me so proud of what we do as a business. And it really makes me proud that we're able to continue living and making sure that the American dream is real, right? A country isn't a place. A country is its people. And the ability to bring more people who are like-minded, who are driven to our country, to me, that's the best thing that I can do. And so I'm going to do everything I can to get people across the finish line in this business. And it isn't going to be easy. It's going to be hard. If it was easy, you wouldn't need me. Or it was easy, you wouldn't need BDV. You could just do it yourself. But it's a tough road that we all have to take on this journey. But I promise you, I'll get you there. And it might not be on your time, but it will be on time. All right. Thanks, everybody. And yes, you're right. We are all getting old. I'm getting old too. But ultimately, I do believe that we're going to get through the process. And it's a difficult process. And you know what? If you ever have like a moment where you just want to call and yell at me, it's fine. And I'll just send me an email. I'll send you my number. Just call and yell at me all you want. It's okay. And I'm going to tell you about all the people I've seen who've called and yelled at me in the past and now have their green cards and are living their dreams in the United States. So we'll do this again soon. I'm already 15 minutes over my time. Thanks, everybody, for having me. I hope to have another one of these next week, maybe from Vietnam. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.